welcome again to another episode of A Blind Insight. Much delayed, unfortunately, so apologies for that, but due to illness in my case and it's later than planned. But I'm Simon Hill and joined by Billy Spateman. How you been?
How we doing? Not too bad. Busy all the time. Yeah. We're doing a world tour of the libraries at the moment. So.
Okay. Sounds very Are there many libraries left? I don't.
Well, we've done 7 or 8. We've got another couple to do, and then I don't know how it works, but the bigger libraries are part of a budget, and the little libraries you can only do through the Friends Association. So we've been financed to do the bigger ones, but we have to approach the smaller ones individually to see if the Friends have got any money,
right?
And we'll do those. So it seems cockeyed, but that's the way it is. But it's very enjoyable, very enjoyable.
Good stuff. Well, it's entertaining the masses, I'm sure. So
yeah,
it's all good. Well, so today, like I say, unfortunately things have. I try and sort of pick topical issues to talk about that are in the news at the moment of things, but so my original plan has had to be revamped because things have moved on a bit since I wrote it. But today I thought that we'd talk about something that's concerning me because it's happening. It's definitely happening, that's for sure. But whether the full implications for some of us, i.e. people with disabilities, elderly people with dementia, etc., have been considered. I'm not sure, which is artificial intelligence, which in itself concerns me because, how often does technology work flawlessly? But they seem to think that that's the way to go. But yeah, so I'll give my thoughts on that. And then it's obviously come up in the news in the last couple of weeks, and is going to be even more so in the coming week when Rachel Reeves takes the stand to tell us what the next steps in her grand economic plan are. But it's nothing new. It's the benefit system, the welfare system, whatever you want to call it, is in drastic need of change. What that change is and how you implement it is very, very difficult. But yeah, now I'm working for the civil service. I sort of experienced it firsthand, working in the middle of it every day. So I'll give my take on it and I've just made a few calculations just to bring a few figures to the equation rather than a lot of debate and arguments. But I think if people actually understood the type of amounts we're talking about, then that would help them, see why change is needed. But yeah, so AI, or artificial intelligence, we're heading. Well, it's already here, of course, in many ways in terms of smart speakers, smartphones, smart this, that, and the other. And the idea is, of course, that in time we'll have to do less and less ourselves, and we can just tell our phones or I don't know, our smart speakers or a gadget to do it for us. But and will we ever see self-driving cars on the road? Personally, I very much have my doubts, but a lot of people still seem to think we will. But as much as to me, the positives, I mean, as a blind person, I'd be the first to point out that if it wasn't for technology, then life would be even more challenging, frankly. And I never use it communicating with phones in this day and age because people don't want to make phone calls. They want you to communicate by text or email. So technology obviously enables blind people to do that, and other other disabilities as well. People who struggle to touch type, dictation technology, helps them, and all this sort of thing. So, I would never ever, say it isn't beneficial. It is. There's a lot of benefits that technology brings to the table, but equally, I think we have to be mindful of the negatives and the reality that not everybody is going to always be able to make use of the technology, or not in the way that society thinks they will. And that can be due to not being able to access it. So, for example, there was a incident, not incident, but so the Midland Metro has now just rolled out ticket machines all over the network, and my first thought was, well, because blind people use the tram, and yes, there may be however they do that, whether it's with guide dog, cane, whatever, but if they how are they going to be able to get themselves a ticket from one of these machines? And yes, they may well have a pass which negates that, but that's still, the point is still there, that taking away humans from the customer service sector, as it were, makes life more difficult for those of us that, need assistance with whatever, because if the assistance isn't there, then it makes travelling and getting around harder, not easier. And I'm sure that's the same for elderly people, moms, dads, granddads, grandmas, aunts, uncles. We all get to that stage where even if we've been used to technology, let's face it, a lot of technology isn't easy to get your head round. And if you have to then wrestle with, paying by card at these touchscreen things, whether it be paying for a train ticket, a car parking ticket, or whatever it may be, that there's always going to be a group of people that just doesn't work for.
Yeah. Also, I think, and also it's slowly eradicating the art of conversation, and it's because the less people that you deal with, the less you become aware that you're not functioning conversationally with anybody.
Well, absolutely. Well, I was thinking about this doing my job the other day, because part of my job is responding to messages via, anyone that has Universal Credit will know that there's the journal feature, which means, and that's how they, unless it's urgent, they say send a message in your journal, and that'll be picked up by the likes of myself or whoever it's meant for. But I sit there reading these messages, and I just think, honestly, a lot of them don't even start by saying hello, and there's no thank yous, no pleases, and they clearly haven't proofread what they've written. And it takes you 5 minutes to sort of decipher it. And I think, but is this because they're just not, it's not real? They're not communicating with a person. It's just a message on a screen. And is that, and are people just, if people go off, what's a person's average sort of interaction these days with even if you're out and about all day, how much do you actually interact with other people?
Mm. It's like it's like when you go and, I'm not going to name the place, but when you go in for a cup of coffee, what the system they use now, it would be, what would you want? Did you want this? Did you want this? Now it's like, have you got the app? Yeah. You get the app, and then that's it. It's done, and they just bring it. Yeah, but you just think, well, hang on a minute. There's a whole 5 minutes that might be precious to some old lady that hasn't spoken to anybody for a week. And yet it's taken away from her,
But what I find even more sad about that kind of thing, and it's all over now. Whether if you phone up your bank, it's like, oh, go online, or like you say, if you go into get a coffee or a sandwich or something, you've got the app, and I think, hang on a minute, you're talking yourself out of a job. Yeah,
I had an instance where we did a job, we did a gig, and they gave me a cheque, which was fair enough, and I said fine. So walks into the bank, and. No tellers or anything there. There was one person on. Now, this is one of the busiest banks that used to be one of the busiest banks, and there was one person just standing there. And I saw a couple of kiosks where obviously you can go for an interview, and somebody at the top desk. So I walked to the top desk and I said, "Can I pay the check-in, please?" And she went, "You use the machine over there." And I went, "But I want to pay the check-in." She says, "Well, it is. You can use the machine." I said, "No. I don't want to use the machine. I want you to pay the check-in." And I don't get annoyed. And I said, "Look, 3 years ago, you had 10 tills. You had 10 people there was conversation. It was buzzing." I said, "There's now one person on your floor. So where are those people? Have they all lost jobs? And you're going to lose your job if I use that machine eventually. So will you pay me check?" And eventually she paid it in. And it was like I was just making a point, really.
Yeah. No, but if it was me and I wanted to keep my job, no matter what the instruction was above, I would try and show that I was still useful.
Yeah.
You know, and because that's the only way it's going to happen. At the end of the day, if they play along with the statistics and they say, oh well, no, but certain only X amount of percentage of transactions were made via the humans, but but most of it was made by the machines, and that justifies their argument. But if you can show that, well, no, there is still a place and a need for this service, then A, that keeps you a job, and B, that's the reality. But it's but like I say, I just find it sad that people don't I'm not, yes, you might say I was going against your instructions, but not necessarily. In the day, this is just their theory. If you're the ones on the ground, you're the ones dealing with the customer. I mean, we've all been there. In environments where people think they know their customers, but they have nothing to do with their customers. But anyway, but so there's that issue of what customer service people. If you want to keep your jobs, keep serving your customers.
Yeah.
No matter no matter what's been fed down from above. You can never if you get reprimanded for helping somebody, then there's something clearly wrong in the company you work for. But yeah.
I suppose the biggest, well, the most a kickback to it is through the arts, isn't it? Because obviously and education, where you can just get somebody to do your thesis for you, get AI to do your thesis. A guy called Joe Bayliss, who comes and helps us with Busking on Charity, carried out an exercise the other day, and he said, not that I'm ever going to use it, he said, but because I was curious, I carried this exercise. So I fed AI this information about me and what I played and blah, blah, blah. And then I said, write a song in the vein of Joe Bayliss. And he said, within 3 minutes, and he put it up on his Facebook site. Here it was. And it was, and to read through the lyrics, it was very, very, it was in the Joe Bayliss vein, the way that he writes and all that. And he said, now, I could go and record that, but it's a non-creative experience.
Yeah.
But how many people are going to do that? It's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, you're a musical man, but I don't know what you think of it all, but it's always sort of baffled me the way that, I mean, yes, I know it's agreed to, and there's money passed on because of it, but it still amazes me how many people virtually seem to make a career out of a hit that wasn't even originally theirs.
Yeah.
But now if we've got to the point where people aren't even where words and music isn't even written by you know what I mean? It's just where does it go? And then there's so many examples you can apply it to. It's another reincarnation, if you like, of the days when robots took over the manufacturing jobs. I guess it's the same principle and the same concerns for those of us that sort of stop and think about the repercussions. But and it always makes me worried, because they keep it's going to create jobs. Well, no doubt it is.
Well, yeah,
but how many
fields,
is it going to cost?
Yeah.
It's not. It's going to create jobs for the techno people, computer people, the people who design the technology, the people who produce it, and all the rest of it. And if companies then need more people to manage it and run it, but it's still. But I can't believe the whole point is you're saying that it's going to. And if you look at the examples we've just given about places losing people and replacing them with self-service, and in the end, it's more people are going to lose out than gain, surely, in terms of jobs. So it's.
I mean, do you envisage a point where AI rules? AI governs an industry that is run by AI for AI, and there's no human involved at all?
Well, it probably already exists somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's sad and worrying on several counts, because how many people, if you did a sweeping survey of the population, how many people started off their working life in a customer service role? Whether it was working behind the counter of your local shop, whether it was answering the phone somewhere, whether it was you name it, whatever it is. So even on a weekend or whatever it might have been, so many people started their working life in that in industry. And as you said, that also teaches you to deal with, different people, different situations. I mean, it's some people might call it low skilled, but I don't agree with that because it's a skill, being able to interact and communicate with people. And as you said, we are definitely losing that because we just don't. Everything's so impersonal now.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. Let's use the shopping experience. Yes, I know it's a long time ago now, but once upon a time, you'd go into a shop, a corner, your local shop, and even if you didn't go in there every day, you'd know the person there, they'd know you, you'd say good morning, good afternoon, blah, 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 and they'd probably even know what newspaper you wanted or, all this stuff. And it may sound daft to some people, but people appreciate it, don't they? Or they used
particularly in this in a world of isolation, and particularly the elderly, where, I mean, we do a lot of work with community groups, and Roger from Sergeant Pepper's made a little speech. They're one of our charities, and he said some people who come to Sergeant Pepper's, it is the only source of conversation that they have for a whole week, because the daughters or the sons do all the shopping online, save them going out. They've got no other clubs to go to. Everything that they do is at the ping of a button. So to physically sit next to somebody and talk to them, it's the only 2 hours they have a week. And that's awful when you think about it. And I hark back to, when we used to live up the close, and on a night, on an evening, the blokes will be out on the steps smoking a fake, talking to, bloke, and all the women would be shouting across the street and all. And it was just full of conversation. You'd never find that now.
Well, and it's just very. I mean, it's a two-way street. People have to want to do it, but it's even sitting in an office, like nowadays, you're very. People just sort of. They might talk to the one or two people next to you, but you can be somewhere and work around people, but still not really know who you work with, and I just think we've just got so used to living in our own little bubbles. But going back to your original question about AI literally running, sadly, I think it will. I mean, I don't believe. I mean, I just can't see how in the real world it can ever be as successful as people think it will be, because whenever does technology work properly? I mean, they've just had to go and recover a couple of astronauts that have been stuck in space for 9 months or something because the technology went wrong somewhere and they were stranded. So, even the technology that's had multi-millions and billions invested in it isn't flawless. But the point is that, as I said, it may, as a small example of, ticket machines on the metro. They keep telling us, use more public transport and this, that, and the other. But if you want people to do that, you need the assistants to be there. You can't expect everybody to be able to use the technology just because that might be cheaper and more convenient for certain people. It's and it's I just really. And like I say, particularly when all they seem to hype up is the benefits of it. But in the grand scheme of things, when all things are considered, I don't think it is the way to go. Even communications, we keep the debate keeps raging about high streets disappearing and this, that, and the other, and businesses not getting trade, and they don't necessarily advertise themselves to their passing trade by putting posters in their window and things. Now it's all online. You think, well, yeah, but they're your audience that's sat at home. Your people wandering past your shop, or if you want to get them in, and that's the thing. I mean, I know, yes, it's tourism, it's tourist areas and everything, but it just made me think about if you're walking around, a town or whatever, if you're on your holidays, then, I mean, it can be, don't get me wrong, it can be a bit intimidated in a way, but you can see what they're doing, and they'll be coming out saying hello, and trying to get you into their restaurant and this, that, and the other, and you think. But if you're not going to put the effort in, if you're not even bothering to communicate with, your passing trade or the people who are actually there in the town, you're not going to. Of course, you're going to think, well, there's no point being here because you're not communicating with them.
I mean, I won't download any apps or anything and it really annoys me, when use the app and I go, I don't want the app. I just want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And the things where, why don't you have one of our loyalty cards?
Yeah.
Well, why? And then the argument I get then is you go in and something that was £2 is now £2.50 to you, but £1.45 if you've got a loyalty card. And I'll go, why have you changed that? It was £2 to everybody last week. Why am I being victimised because I don't want one of your loyalty cards?
But more to the point, the loyalty card isn't a loyalty card; it's on the app.
Yeah,
so
it's on the app, yeah. And I'm saying I don't want you to have me information. Mind you, I'm from a different planet, so.
But you're,
But I'll stick to my guns. I'll never do it, even if it spites myself. I'll just think, no, I won't do that.
No. But people of your generation, all power to you. You need to, because there'll be another. It's not going to change. There'll be people. I mean, they keep telling us that dementia is an increasing problem and this, that, and the other. So there's going to be, there's still going to be people coming down the line that even, like I said, even if they've used technology, because as the generations go by, yes, of course, we've been used to technology. Computers have been around all of my life in some form, and obviously the next generation even more so. But we're not. If your mind isn't, able to, because things constantly change, and and they say, it's one of the things that humans, we don't like change, but when you're constantly having to keep up, it is hard. And particularly when you get to an age, you think, I've only just learnt this, now they've gone and changed it, and it is so frustrating for people, and so people as they get older, and if they think this is frustrating or this is ridiculous, it shouldn't just be the answer or the get at all. You have to use the world shouldn't be like that. We keep. How much do we bang on about inclusivity and diversity and all that, the other, and God knows how much time and money is spent on it, and then that's the attitude we give out to people. It's not working somewhere, or not, the way it's meant to, and it's very, 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 very frustrating. But I mean, thoughts, opinions, welcome. So email simonhill_6@hotmail.com, or you can comment on the podcast page when I put the podcast out. But it's just, there seems to be a minority of people who seem to think that this is the way that things should go, but yet don't seem to engage with what I think is certainly got to be a large amount of people in all sorts of circumstance, but we'll see. But yeah, on to the next topic, which again is it is about the minority thinking how something should be done, or what's acceptable and what isn't. But the benefit system, obviously there was not obviously, but if you haven't heard, there was a announcement or a plan laid out in Parliament last week or the week before, and of course it's generated a lot of noise and criticism. And I think I talked about this on one of the first episodes we did, because it is something I feel very strongly about, and the issue that disabled charity. Every time a government tries to do something about it, we get the reaction, you're penalising disabled people, you're putting disabled people into poverty, all that stuff. But the simple matter is that you're not talking about genuine people with disabilities and mental health conditions. It's talking about people who, for whatever reason, just seem determined that they don't want to work, they don't see why they should work, and yet want to be kept in a certain quality of life by being paid money from the state system, from the taxpayer system, and people are, particularly when people are struggling and working, and then they hear about this sort of thing. It just can't be allowed to continue. And now I work with it every day, and some of it I knew about, but I never, even the extent that it happens has taken me by surprise. And above all else, kind of going back to what we were saying about communication these days, but the attitude of people is that they they believe or feel that this is their wage, their money. They refer to it as their money. Oh, you haven't paid me. Why have you taken that money off me? And this, that, and the other. And I think to myself, hang on a second, this isn't money that you've earned and been paid. This is money that's been given to you to help you survive. And you've not done anything to earn it. And we're sitting here working to make sure that you get your money and everything, and answer your questions and everything. You're having a go at us when we're working to sort this out for you, and you're getting this money for not working. There's something really wrong there. But one of the big concerns I have about it is that there was the debate, and there's been the argument about the two-child rule, where basically if a child was born after, if you have a third child that's born after, it's April 2017, I think off the top of my head, then you can't claim any child benefit or child support for that. But the issue now is that we keep hearing about the amount of disabled people or people claiming disability benefits is going up. And it seems to me, from the very small insight that I have into it, that more and more people and more children are being diagnosed with a disability. And and that really, really worries me, because as a child, you're then being branded as having a disability. And of course, the most common ones are things like ADHD and behavioural ones, etc. So nothing physical as such, but it seems to me that people are using it as a way of getting round the two-child cap rule, and the figures that can bring in terms of income is just staggering, really. And that's, the motivation for people doing it is clear. And so rather than, there's a lot of noise, a lot of opinions, but I just wanted to break it down into some simple figures, really, to illustrate the point. And so
is it? I mean, will the whatever policies have been brought in, are they implemented directly, immediately, or are they phased in over a period of time, so people have got time to adjust? Or
oh yeah, well, if you want my opinion, this is just the idea. It's got to go through consultation and be argued about and blah blah blah. And in the end, as what normally happens, it'll get watered down. Then in the end, the government will think, oh, actually, this is making us unpopular, so we won't bother, and then we come back to it and on it rolls. And but just to give an example, so if somebody can claim disability living allowance for one child, if they get, there's different rates, but if they manage to get the top rate, then that will mean they then get for that child £9,583.60 for the year for one child. So of course, if they then manage to get another child on top of that, you can double that. And and I've seen families with 3 or 4 disabled children. So right there, that's for that. And then that's on top of if the adult has a disability themselves, and they're claiming, they'll get the same amount again for them for person dependent payments. So straight away, you're up then to 18,000 or so. So if you take a household of 2 adults and just 1 child, all claiming disabled benefits, claiming the top rate of disabled benefits and the disabled child element of universal credit, and I haven't included absolutely everything that's available to them here, but equally, universal credit deductions are made depending if they earn any income, etc. But basically, if you're not working, therefore there's no earnings to be deducted, etc., give or take, a household with 2 disabled adults and 1 disabled child will be getting £39,596.04 in benefits.
You shouldn't struggle on that.
Well, this is it, isn't it? You know, and like I said, that's been, yes, you know, I haven't, you know, I'm not going to bore you know, you can work it out to the penny and give or take one a bit here and there, but ultimately, you know, and I've seen it, you know, with the people the claims I deal with, two adults, one child, you know, and like I said, that's only one child. If that doesn't include other things they will get if. And the crucial point, well, is, sorry, I should have said, is the benefit cap. There is a benefit cap, but that doesn't apply to these benefits because of the disabled element. So that's how they get around it.
Yeah.
So this is the sort of money we're talking about when people talk about, you know, why it needs to change. A household can be getting way over what the average salary is for essentially doing and contributing nothing. And this is why it needs to be addressed. How you do it, without, you know, is very, very difficult, because the simple fact of the matter is that, for reasons which I don't understand, given, you know, people talk about, you know, feeling depressed and anxiety. Yes, that's how I've felt over the last few years while I've been trying to get a job. But now I've got one. You know, it doesn't solve everything in your life, but boy, it certainly takes away the worry of, well, if this goes on much longer, I don't know whether I'll be able to keep my house or my, you know. So, and it goes back again to what we were saying about communicating, integrating, you know, mixing with people. If you never mix with people and get out there and then of course it's going to be anxious for you the first time you do it. But the more you do it, the easier it gets, and it's just. But there are people, as I say, based on the attitude that I come across, who, for whatever reason, don't want to work or don't feel they should. And one of the things they keep talking about is improving the support for getting people into work. But that it doesn't matter what support's in place if the people refuse to use it. And one of the conditions of claiming universal credit, unless you can get yourself diagnosed as disabled and you can be exempt from having to do it, is you have to attend appointments at the job centre, and the stroppiness that comes up. You know, you've been asked you're supposed to want to find a job. You've been asked to attend appointments with the job centre because we want to help you find a job, and they don't even want to do that.
Do you think it's generational, Simon? If your grandparents, if your parents, for whatever reason, are locked in that culture, it perpetuates down to the kids, and they learn very easily that they can work the system.
Well, it's got to be. At the end of the day, you grow up and you're influenced by what you know and what you're around and what you know. If it's the norm, you know, if you grow up in a family or household where mom and dad, or just mom, whatever it may be, you know, the adult doesn't work. You know, you have yourself a brother, however many siblings, etc., and ultimately, you grow up seeing that. Well, you know, my mom and dad did all right; they didn't work. You know, and if that's the attitude that's passed down to you as you grow up, you know, you need to get yourself a good education. You know, life doesn't owe you anything. You need to get yourself a good education, then get out there and try and, you know, do the best for yourself, because no one's going to give you anything. You know, if that's what's drummed into you growing up, then that's what, you know, you believe, and that's what if that's what you see people who, you know, go out there and work, as you know, day in, day out, and you know, and strive, and that's how they do things. But if the attitude you get in your ear all the time is, well, I'm not going to work, you know, that you know the welfare system should pay for my upkeep and my rent and for the children and everything, you know, it's not my responsibility, then that's, you know, and I haven't got the evidence in front of me, but the evidence will be out there somewhere to say that then passes on, and it goes down through the generations, and you end up with, as it keeps being said by, you know, the people trying to make changes, that young people end up with no prospects, no money, you know, and no confidence and no skills, because all they've done is just gone out of school into the benefit system.
Yeah.
And that's it. Where does your life go then? Yeah. You know, and of course it's going to make you miserable. Well, you know, I'd hope it would. But, you know,
And that's not. I mean, you're not decrying that there are genuine people
Of
out
course
there.
there are, and
How to split it? It must be an absolute nightmare to try and find out weed the chaff from from the wheat. Really.
yeah, there was. As my house parent, when I was at boarding school, used to have a phrase that has always stuck with me. Whenever she was issuing a reprimand to the group, and something had happened, she didn't know who had done it or whatever, but was dishing out the reprimand, she'd say, "If the cap fits, wear it." In other words, if you're doing nothing wrong, if you've done nothing wrong, if you're doing it, then it's not you that we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
And that for me is the crux of it. You're not. And the majority of people. I mean, yes, that from my point of view as a disabled person wanting to work, I haven't found any support. The only way I've got a job is by simply just applying and getting it. I haven't got it through any support that's available, and I would say that the support wasn't very good. But equally, it's not just that you have to put the miles in yourself.
Yeah, to get it. Yeah,
but it doesn't matter what support's there. And that's when you're trying to use the support. But if the support, if you're not interested in the support because like you've got this mindset for whatever reason that why should I work? Then the problem's going to go on because how do you get these people out of that situation? Because you can't take the money off them, and you can't force them, to do what they don't want to do. So that's my take on it, So again, it's difficult, There's no easy answers, but I think what is for certain is it cannot continue because the country just simply cannot afford it. We need to face that reality. It needs to be dealt with, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But the charities who are supposed to represent genuine disabled people instead of keep jumping up and down saying, "Oh, you're putting disabled people in poverty," they need to back the government with these changes and do what they can to assist in identifying the genuine cases from the not genuine ones, because if they're really about representing the genuine disabled people with whatever health condition it is they represent, they need to be on their side and making sure that the people who are having this money under false pretenses basically are wheedled out, and that can only happen if the government's allowed to do something about it, basically.
Do you think that they do enough, the charities, or are the hands tied, obviously through funding and stuff like that?
I think they need to do more. In my experience, blind charities, I've found very little help in terms of if you a blind person wanted to find a job, I've never had any assistance that's really produced any results from them. If you just need advice generally about this, that, and the other, then yes, fine. But if you're someone who's blind and doesn't want to just accept your benefits and be on the sidelines, then no, not very. They need to do more. And like I said, I couldn't comment on other charities, but yeah, they need to do more. They need to, rather than just complaining about when things like this come up, they need to do more and help the government make a difference and make sure there's more funding available to help the people who really need it. And that's the.
And from I suppose from your personal point of view, you've really got to, you get loads of rejections, and it's just a case of you have to keep plodding on.
Well, it's damn hard. I've sat and cried, literally thinking, what's the point in my existence? I'll make no bones about it. I'm not saying it isn't, and the anxiety and the depression, I felt all of it, and I still do. But if you want to, it's equally not the rest of the world's responsibility to give you the life you think you want. You have to try and find your way in, and if the support is there, then fine, great. But it can't be allowed for someone to just simply say, "There's nothing really physically wrong with me. I could do a job at some point, but I just can't be bothered." And that they're the people that need to be wheedled out and. And like I said, how you deal with it is very difficult. But it's very. The people who want the help and want the support need to be given it, and the people who are just taking advantage of the system need to be wheedled out. Is ultimately what needs to happen. So unfortunately we're out of time for this episode, but as I said, this is obviously a complex issue, and I feel I've only really scratched the surface of it in the time we've had. So I'm going to record a spring statement special, if you like, basically, where I'll continue to explain what I think the flaws are in the current benefit system and how it is being abused and to what extent, and what needs to be clamped down on in order to get a grip of the situation, because it just cannot be allowed to continue, and there needs to be difficult decisions made, not based on popularity, but based on what needs to be done for the sake of all of our futures, to be honest, because at the end of the day, we may think it doesn't affect us too much, but in the end, the country's prosperity, the jobs that are out there, and the opportunities to earn money and the wealth that needs to be generated has to come from work and investment, and that can't happen if too many people are just sitting around and not contributing. So keep an eye out for that. I'll let people know when it is out, but in the meantime, comments welcome, because it's an important subject and I want to get feedback, because it's sometimes you sit here and think, is it just me? But particularly from the genuine disabled people amongst us, because I don't know about anyone else, but I'm sick and tired of people who shouldn't be getting support and money getting it, and then having the gall and the audacity to complain that they're hard done to, but yet they're still able to get around unaided and live a pretty fulfilling life as far as I can tell. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. Email simonhill_6@hotmail.com, or leave a comment on the podcast page, and we'll continue very soon.